government and or authorities concerned can have further discussion of this issue, so that we can have a outcome that is mutually agreeable, and that will contribute to the well-being of the domestic workers. Thank you.
Ambassador, Your Excellency, I noticed that from the time you shook hands with the President at his sauna, there were no more stories about Chinese vessels chasing away our fishing boats. To what should I attribute this good news?
To your President.
Oh, how, in what way? By just shaking hands with him?
No, I have the honor to have several opportunities to discuss issues in our bilateral relationship with your President. Almost each time we met, he mentioned about his concern about the fishermen. So you can give the credit to your President.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Professor Bobby Pasco.
Yeah, thank you, Wilson. Technically, I'm not from the media. I'm a simple analyst, Mr. Ambassador, but I also write occasional commentaries for the media. I'm also an educator in international politics. Can I be allowed to ask 2 questions? My first question, yeah, because I wanted to give more preference to the media. My first question, Ambassador, is thinking about the projection with regard to the presidency of Mr. Duterte. You know, he has 6 years, or he has only 6 years. And he has opened a new chapter in Philippine-China relations. You were mentioning earlier about a comprehensive menu of possible agreements, cooperation, etc. That will be discussed and maybe even clinched in the form of an MOU or MOA during the 3-day state visit of Mr. Duterte. But that's the first step. What is your perspective with regard to what follows next, especially within the 6-year presidency of Duterte? What do you expect from the Chinese side? My second question is with regard to your to what you said, that you are not skilled in mathematics, but I'm going to ask you anyway a mathematical question. The latest news is that the Chinese yuan is now improving quite a lot, and it is predicted to become, if it has not become yet, a reserve currency in the world finance system. But the longer projection is that eventually the renminbi or yuan may compete with the US dollar, considering that next year America will again be besieged by another economic recession and so on and so forth. So your thoughts on this, Mr. Ambassador? Thank you.
Let me start with your second question, because I'm interested, although I'm not quite good at numbers, but I'm interested in US dollar. You know, Chinese currency, RMB, is in a quick process of internationalization. And it's become number 8th currency that is being used in international trade. And there are many central banks have used Chinese currency as part of their foreign reserves. I think probably that includes the Philippines. Whether China will be able to compete with the US dollar, that is really something that will happen in the future. because up until now, the US dollar is still paramount in the international trade, in foreign reserves. But all these things will happen in the international market, which is based on international accepted rules. Neither the Americans nor Chinese can manipulate their currencies. They have to follow the rules. But with China's rise economically and financially, there will be some kind of competition. But this competition is not meant to create chaos in international financial market. In terms of bilateral trade, there is a strong tendency, not only in the Chinese businessmen or among the Filipino businessmen, to use their own respective currencies to settle the trade between the two sides. I heard, according to some research, but not the research but done by him, if you change to use, let me say, but you're now, in most cases, you're using US dollars to conduct international trade. And each year, according to some researchers, that you lose about 2.4 billion US dollars. Yes, 2.4 billion annually. So we hope that if we want to enhance our bilateral trade, it would be better to consider to conduct trade in our own currencies. But we have no intention whatsoever to replace the US dollar, even in the Philippines. And we are not capable to do that. Thank you. Your first question. President Duterte's state visit to China is only a beginning, which is a good beginning. As I said earlier, it will open a new chapter. It will start a new process. In the following 6 years, we can do lots of things together. Things that contribute to the development of the Philippines in the areas of infrastructure, agriculture, and things that unite us, so that by working together we can contribute to the regional development. Thank you.
Thank you. Question here. Yes, Ms. Ellen Tordesillas from Vera Files. Very distinguished journalist.
Mr. Ambassador, I understand some of the MOUs or MOAs are still being worked out, but how many could you give us a figure, like at least 12, at least 10?
Well, I have to repeat, I'm not as good at figures. There are at least a dozen MOUs that are being discussed and finalized. And if we reach consensus on some of the MOUs, they will be signed during the visit. And if not, we'll continue the discussion and sign the MOUs as follow-up to your president's visit.
And has the President Duterte asked for a specific place to go, like is he going to the Great Wall or any other? Is there a special request from him?
The president has never mentioned Great Wall. He asked about whether there is a rehabilitation center in Beijing. And he also asked about whether we have a center of traffic control in Beijing. These are the places he will definitely go, but whether he will go to the Great Wall or not, I'm quite sure. And I remember some people asked about rehabilitation center. I forgot to answer. The Chinese side will support and finance rehabilitation centers in the following years. As a matter of fact, there are Chinese businessmen who have been so generous to have donated one rehabilitation center that is under construction. Your president mentioned about it. It's a private. Yes, the one on the military base. It is going to become operational, I think, by the middle of November, which will come at the first phase will accommodate 2,500 people. You know, by providing those rehabilitation centers, it is a direct response to your president's concern about those drug addicts who have surrendered to the authorities. I think this is the humanitarian side of the war against the drug-related crimes. So Chinese government and Chinese business circles is quite concerned about this, and we are thinking what we can do to contribute. And I would like to take the opportunity to announce there is another private donation to build a rehabilitation center that will cover 120,000 square meters.
Wow. Where? In what?
The location is to be decided by the Filipino authorities. I'm sorry, I have to keep it confidential for now.
China-based businessman?
The Chinese businessman.
China-based?
Well, he's traveling.
Yes, Ms. Daza has a follow-up question.
Do you have the same problem in China with drug addicts and pushers and drug lords?
You know, we also face serious drug problems. We are fighting it against the drug-related crimes in a very strict and firm manner. You know, China has death penalty. Anyone who is in possession of maybe 50 grams of cocaine or something equivalent to that amount, and he's going to be sentenced to death penalty. So that's why we say illegal drugs are common enemies of all nations. Of course, it is the common enemy that both China and the Philippines have to deal with. So that is the common grounds for our further collaboration and cooperation. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome also Professor Alex Magno there from Philippine Star,
Okay.
very well-known columnist.
Why are you a professor working for the Philippine Star?
Yes.
Okay.
Very smart guy. Yes. Question from... Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, sir. Sherian Torres, ABS-CBN News. Mr. Ambassador, last night I understand you had another meeting with the President. Can you discuss some of the details that, if you may please, or at least any last-minute additional request made to you by the President and vice versa? And my second question is, you mentioned something about your intention or your government's intention to have stability, cooperation, and friendship in the South China Sea. Can we take this to mean that during the President's visit, there will be an announcement or a possible announcement of relaxing of your rules to the Scarborough Shoal and other areas?
Well, at the first question, which meeting you are referring to? The latest one? The latest one, I think it has happened a few days ago. Okay. Not yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday. I forgot. Yeah.
How many?
Up until now,
Yes.
I'm not that good at fingers. let me use my fingers. 8.
Eight.
Lucky number, right?
Yes.
I just requested an audience with your president, and I had the opportunity to meet with him several days ago at the palace. As a matter of fact, your president never makes requests. He expressed his hope that his state visit to China will be a successful one, and he will focus on how to enhance cooperation that will contribute to the well-being of the Filipino people. I have expressed our willingness to work with him during the state visit to make sure that it's going to be a landmark and historic and fruitful visit. And I also assured him he is going to have a comfortable and easy stay in Beijing. Thank you.
Just to follow up.
I have already answered the second question.
Just to follow up on that. Mr. Ambassador, you have been talking about positive expectations. Have you been assured by the President that there will be no hard talk? And what are you prepared for surprises? What are your fears for this visit of the President? And just one more point, if the Philippines will rethink downgrading its relations with the U.S., how will this affect the Philippine-China relations? And your reaction to the President's announcement that it will stop joint patrols and it will stop with the U.S. in the South China Sea? And how does this sit with the Chinese people, as well as the stopping the military exercises? What is the reaction of China to all this?
Well, your president's state visit to China is really a happy thing. We have nothing to fear. And the visit is going to focus on friendship and cooperation. That's all good things. As for the second part of your question, I wouldn't like to comment on it because the Philippines is an independent and sovereign country. It has every right to decide its own domestic and foreign policies. So I would rather not comment on it.
It will be good for China-Philippines relations, do you think?
Well, China-Philippines relations will develop on its own merits. Although we're living in an interdependent world, I think all countries need to look at the common grounds that we can share for the future of our younger generations, that is, maintain peace and stability in this region, and to make joint efforts to promote development and prosperity.
Are you leaving with the President or against the President? One day ahead?
Well, as a Euro practice, I have to go back earlier so that I can be prepared to accompany your president throughout his visit. Do you have any message you would like me to convey to your president?
Sir? Sir Ruth Cabal from CNN Philippines. Ambassador, hi. You mentioned that the problem of illegal drugs is a common enemy of the Philippines and China, but do you also plan to help out in terms of intelligence and maybe law enforcement? You mentioned earlier the drug rehabilitation, because there are also some reports, even our congressional hearings, that some of the drugs come from other countries, like China was mentioned, and even Korea.
Well, China has never denied the fact that there are some Chinese nationals are involved in the illegal drug-related crimes in the Philippines. But our policy has always been very clear. Any Chinese nationals who has committed crimes in the Philippines, they should be brought to justice in accordance to the Philippines law. And the Chinese government is and relevant departments stand ready to cooperate, to bring them to justice. So there is no such a thing that China is trying to hide them or any drug laws. As I mentioned earlier, even in China, because the law is even more severe than the Philippines. So it is understandable some drug laws wouldn't like to go back to the mainland China. They would like to go somewhere else. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, I'm Paterno Esmacal from Rappler.com. Mr. Ambassador, the sense that I am getting is that during the President's trip, it would be as if the ruling on the South China Sea never happened. So is that an accurate reading of how the ruling would be regarded? How would you regard this ruling in the context of President Duterte's trip?
The ruling has happened. That's something that is a fact. But the visit is not about South China Sea. It is about our friendship and cooperation.
Mr. Ambassador, I'm Veronica from GMA News Online. Story recently where an analyst said that accepting Chinese investments.
I'm sorry, I'm asking
Yes.
to talk into
It's okay, it's okay.
It's your question.
One analyst said that accepting Chinese investments might be disadvantageous to the Philippines when it comes to dealing with addressing the South China Sea issue. What would you comment to that? Thank you.
Can you tell me the analyst? So I have never. Okay. Let me just give you my response. South China Sea is there. We do have differences, but letting the differences, taking the overall bilateral relationship as a hostage, it is not worthwhile and it's stupid. I think it is the common responsibility for both China and the Philippines to address this issue in a way that will contribute to the development of our bilateral relationship. So according to the logic of the analyst you mentioned, we can do nothing but quarreling all the day about South China Sea. So I would say that we do have the problems. It requires both sides to sit down to talk and to create conditions and atmosphere to a peaceful solution, if not now, but in the future. In the meantime, we make joint efforts to promote our friendship and cooperation will benefit our peoples now and in the future. This is a realistic and pragmatic way to handle the issue. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, as a follow-up to what you said, are we looking forward to the joint development of resources in the South China Sea? Because this will be mutually beneficial to both the Chinese and the Filipinos.
Actually, we made successful efforts under the Arroyo administration, and when people talk about South China Sea, they simply focus on the differences we have, and they have been neglecting the areas we can cooperate with each other, such as maritime or resources, including gas and oil, and how to maintain the freedom of navigation for commercial vessels, how to fight the pirates, and how to protect the ecosystem and environment, the maritime environment, and disaster relief and prevention, all these things that we can discuss. Actually, the Chinese government has already established a China-ASEAN Maritime Cooperation Fund, which is 3 billion yuan. But if you divide it by 6, it's about $500 million, just to finance projects for maritime cooperation. And we can take advantage of that. Thank you.
Would you have any timeline for that to let the idea come to fruition?
Open mic,